If you don't know that and you haven't figured that out, you probably aren't going to get much out of this talk anyway. All right. Let's do this. So, is this going to get any audio on that?
Sure.
Should I bother even talking to this?
Yes. So the rest of the room can hear it.
It's picking you up. All right, good. All right, well, enough having fun. So, the basic part of this talk is that policy is a very poor substitute for preparation. Everybody agree with me?
Yep.
All right, fantastic. That's a great place to start. How many of you guys know how to change a tire? Okay, great. How many of you guys are confident you can do it in an adverse situation, like in the dark on the roadside, with your dog barking at you and your wife nagging at you because you're late and it's pouring rain? How many of you done that? To the point where you know you could do it with almost your eyes closed. Anybody watch Formula One here? Formula One fans? All right. You know they can change it 4 tires on a Formula One car in 2.6 seconds flat? That doesn't blow your mind. I don't know what will. Here's the key. They didn't do that by reading a manual. They didn't do that and get to that point by sort of guessing at it, by hearing somebody talk about it. Do it. They got to that point because they did it over and over. Some of those guys practice 800 to 900 times a week. Now imagine this. Your job is the wheel nut guy, okay? You're kneeling down. You got a wheel gun. One person runs over, grabs the wheel. You go bolt in. You pull it out. The other guy drops the other wheel in. You bolt it back in. You do that 900 times a week. Now, we're not talking about quality of life here, but that gets to be the point where you can do this probably in your sleep, right? What in the world does changing tires have to do with security? I think pretty much everything. Because a lot of us really, really don't practice security. We practice stuff that we see written down. We stare at dashboards every once in a while. We scan something. Maybe we write some policies, but we don't actually do real security to the point where we can do this in our sleep. All right, what does practice make? Wrong, makes good enough. See, you guys haven't paid attention. Practice makes good enough. If you think practice makes perfect, anybody gotten to that level? Go ahead, raise your hand proud. I want to come work for you. Michael, you're a character. I want to come see you in Kingston sometime. So, what is the goal of information security, right? There's a lot of this discussion going on right now, and you just have to look at my Twitter stream to see people disagree with me. But hence the sticker. And he's not in the room. Damn it. That figures. So some of us are actually out there to prevent an attack. Who's out there to prevent an attack? How's that working? Who's out there to prevent a breach? They're not the same thing, right? Anybody out there to prevent an incident? Anybody's just thinking about how to survive the attack? Forget not getting breached. Because if you figure out how to avoid getting attacked, I'd like to know, genuinely, because this is something the federal government would love you to tell them. This is some sort of Jedi mind trick you figured out how to pull on the entire world to basically cloak you in the shield of invisibility. I do this because it's funny, but everybody in this room at some point has told the Bears analogy. If you tell me you haven't, you're lying to me, right? 2 hikers running away from the bear. One of them bends down and ties his shoe. The other guy says, "Why are you tying your shoe? Because I don't have to outrun the bear. I have to just outrun you so the bear eats you." And we go, "Hey, but that's how it works in InfoSec." Wrong, it doesn't. Because there are infinite amounts of bears. Josh Corman talks about this all the time. There's an infinite amount of bears, and they're all going to eat you because they multiply like bunnies. See what I did there? Anybody want to try to define enterprise resilience? I'm going somewhere with this. Anybody want to try to define enterprise resilience for me? Can you read the slides from all the way back there? That's good. I got a thumbs up. Sure. No, nobody's brave. I like that. So nobody's going to be able to define enterprise resistance. Enterprise resilience for the enterprise is a form of resistance. It's a way to get back to business. So we asked earlier, what are you guys do? What are you here for? What are you trying to learn? What does information security actually do? Has anybody ever posed that question to you? As information security practitioners, what in the hell do you do? That. You get the company back to business when things go wrong, right? You're the mechanic that fixes the car to get it running again because the car makes money. Anybody here in a position to make their company money? A few, right? That's because you're professional services people, and actually that's what you do for a living. unless you're actually, the name of the company includes something about professional service and doing security, delivering security. You don't actually do security for a living, okay? You help the company get back to business. So can you facilitate back to business?
Did you start?
The question is, can you facilitate back to business, ignoring that? So we put a little bit of water, a little bit of cold water on this. There's a great line from Dennis Leary about tossing a cold bucket of water on the Duke, but we're going to avoid that one because this is not the right audience. Most people can't, so back to that Formula One analogy, most people in InfoSec can't actually do security well. Why? Because we work really, really hard and we spend lots and lots of money to avoid a situation where there is a security failure. But once it happens, and if you agree with me, then I'd like you to sort of raise your hand because I want to know how many people are like-minded here. Bad things happen. Poop will hit the fan. Right? How many of you guys agree it's not a question of if, but when? Fantastic. Right? That is it is. It's a matter of if. It's a matter of not if, but absolutely when. Because if you, hands up in the air, who's got a security policy in their organization? All right, keep them in the air. Good security procedures, well written, lots of security controls, lots of technology, blinky shiny lights, and of course it's out the room for that one, right? Lots of blinky shiny lights in the closet. Who cares? The key question for all of that is, does any of that work? That's why I put it in caps. Does any of it work, right? The Formula One guy that changes the front left tire got a brand new shiny bolt, gun for that bolt, right? That wheel nut. It is the latest thing. It's supposed to be 20% faster, 30% less error prone, and he's going to walk into a Formula One race brand new out of the box. Yeah, right. He's going to try it 1,000 times, right? Do we do that? We kind of do. Sort of, kind of. Because preparation tends to be relative, and we prepare for things that we're comfortable with. You guys are trying your absolute best to make sure I'm distracted. I'm just kidding.
Oh, it gets worse.
It gets worse?
Yeah. Oh, yeah. Smart ass in every crowd.
Well, there's 3.
Yeah, I'm the best.
So, what's really sad, and go back to quoting Josh. Oh, God, he's going to come get me. So go back to quoting my good buddy Josh Corman. He talks about, this is really scary. A lot of us spend most of our time in enterprise security preparing for compliance audits. This means that the attacker, the quote hacker, is not your enemy. The auditor is. Process that for a second. Because it's funny. And it's even funny to joke about. Because, I mean, this is a fact, right? The attacker may come get you. The auditor will show up. Which one are you more apt to prepare for? I don't know. It's kind of a math problem, right? Guaranteed versus maybe. Sorry. So a lot of us prepare for compliance audits, which then means the enemy is not the hacker, it's the auditor. How screwed up is that? Then we've got staged attacks, and this is generally going to make me not the most popular person at this conference, but pen testing, the way it's done today, is a complete and utter farce in most cases. Value of about yay much. Here's why. Here's why, all right, before you get totally indignant on me. Here's why. Your client, if you're pen testing, your client calls you and says, I want you to pen test these 5 IP addresses between the hours of 7 p.m. on Sunday night and 3 a.m. on Monday morning when we're ready. I got to make sure my team is back from vacation, all our servers are patched. We'll tell you when we're ready. So let me ask you a question back on that. When's the last time somebody that's an attacker came back to you and said, okay, are you ready? You guys good? Come on, really? A friend of mine told me this story, so I keep repeating it because it's funny and it's true and it's sad. They do phishing as a pen test exercise. It's part of an exercise. And part of one of their scope of engagements was to do a phishing against this organization, phishing attack. And they outright told them, the CEO and his staff, not in scope. They're like, why not? Well, because we know they'll get popped. You don't know how. Do you not know how this works? There's a Princess Bride quote to be thrown in there, but I'll keep going. A lot of us are afraid of the big bad hacker and preparing for the auditor. This is sort of like, I bet you guys didn't know that vending machines kill more people than sharks do every year. Who knew that? Economics fans? Vending machines kill more people per year than sharks do. Where's my vending machine awareness week? Seriously, like, why is the Discovery Channel doing this? Why do we not have vending machine awareness stickers? Why is this not publicized? Because it's not sexy, it's not cool, right? Sharks, big shark, pointy teeth? No? All right, so these are all synthetic risks, things that we know we can prepare for, and we know when they come at us, we know how to fight them back. Total farce. So let me ask you a what if. So what if you get a low-quality attacker? What's a low-quality attacker? Script kiddies, right? I downloaded low-orbit ion cannon, I pointed it at a website, I clicked the go button, and I'm a hacker. Maybe. Mommy lets you. So high-quality attackers, what have we been saying for the last 20 years in InfoSec about high-quality attackers? The determined attacker will always, one more time, everybody? There! Okay, that was like 3 people. Almost everybody. The low-quality attacker will basically be like that code red attack that continues to pollute the internet with noise because it will never go away. The high-quality attacker, it doesn't matter how much you spend. It doesn't matter how many firewalls you have. It doesn't matter how up-to-date and how many antivirus updates you've done. They're going to get you. Right? So it's not about that. So high-impact, low probability. We spend a lot of time in InfoSec preparing for things that are high-impact, high probability. Things that we know are going to happen. Auditors, right? We spend a ton of focus on this. Why? Because the things that we think they may happen, yeah, but there's going to be this giant smoldering crater in the ground if they're successful. Yeah, but the odds of them are being successful, and their odds of them are coming after us, yeah, they're kind of blurry and fuzzy. Right? So we don't prepare for that very often. So security is something that might fail. No, that's actually not true. Security will fail. Those of you guys that agreed with me, it's not a question of if, but when, agree with this. Security will fail. Whatever it is that you think you do, at some point you won't do it good enough to beat back the bad guys. And you will get popped. So who's got a good memory? Who's watched Fight Club? Fight Club is about what? Taking a hit and crawling over and doubling over in pain and calling it over? Not really, right? Fight Club was all about taking a shot and fighting back. Well, in this case, unfortunately, fighting back is slightly illegal for reasons that are beyond the scope of this talk. But when you take a hit and you get popped and bad things happen, you have to do that one thing that we all actually get paid for. It's not security, it's getting back to business. It doesn't matter how you do it, what you do, but it's getting the organization back to making money, and if that's what you do, right? There's a game of 5 whys that a lot of us play. If you ever have those of you that are parents, I've watched several of my friends do this with their kids. They'll tell their kids something, and they'll go, why? Well, because. Well, why? Well, because of this. Why? Eventually, you ask. The notion is, if you ask why 5 times, eventually you'll get either the person completely annoyed, and they'll leave, or you'll get to the heart of what really matters. And for us, you're eventually going to get to the point where the answer is why? Because this is what the company cares about. Why do I do this? Right? Why do we put up IPSs? Well, because they stop bad guys. And we don't want bad guys. Well, why? Because they disrupt business. Why? Well, because disrupting business keeps us from making money. Aha! So we put up IPSs because we want to keep people from disrupting our ability to make money. Not because we want to keep out bad guys. Make sense? All right, cool. So people, process, and technologies, everything at some point fails. You guys House fans? Dr. House? It's off the air now, unfortunately. Right? House said people what?
Why?
They also fail. Everybody, everything, every technology, process, and person also fails. Let me give you a fantastic example of this. I used to work for a large 2-letter organization, and at one point, about a decade ago when I was there, we managed to digitize and move everything incident response into a nice web interface. So if you had a server that failed, or an application that was unavailable, you'd go to the web page, you'd log in, you'd tell it the symptoms, you'd tell it the things that were effective, and it would, on the back end, make these routing calls. right? Whether it had to restart a service, whether it had to alert somebody, wake people up, whatever the case may be. So we're like, hey, this is pretty comfortable. We're good with this, right? Step one of every incident thing, every incident response, go log into the ticketing system. That's equals Slammerhead. Step one, log into the, oh wait, the internet's down. Yeah, so is the internal network. So step one doesn't work, now what? There's 10 of us standing around going, you know what to do? Anybody plan for this? Nope. So what do we do? I don't know. Right? I bet a lot of you guys are in that position as well. Admit it or not. So everything fails. Because once you've got a bunch of policies, procedures, and a lot of good blinking lights in your closet, a lot of technology, it's easy to feel safe, except that it's not safety that you feel, it's complacency. You feel really, really complacent because you're like, hey, I'm good, I got this. So because enterprises are very, very complacent, my premise here is that if we're not tested, we're not prepared. And this is what leads us to the notion that validation is required. Not validation in the form of that we're doing it today, because it's not very good. It's not validation. We pat ourselves on the back and say, yeah, let's prepare. Okay, tomorrow I'm going to race my car off this cliff. But I'm going to put a bunch of padding down there because I know I might not get the right speed and not to get over that cliff. And the next day you do it, and you miss, but you fall into all that padding. You go, yeah, I prepared for that really well. But what if a 747 flies by at that point and you smack into that? Could happen, right? You're not prepared for it. What do you do next? So we validate defenses, we validate response, because it's not just enough to validate your defense. Because defenses, as we've just agreed, will likely fail. Things will go badly. But you have to validate the response and your technology. How many of you guys have more dashboards right now than you could possibly look at in a day? Right? If the notion is if you have more than a ratio of 2 dashboards, security dashboards, this is security stuff. To each analyst you have in security, you're doing it badly. Because you can't possibly, okay.
You're now cameraman.
Okay.
That is really scary.
I'm gonna have to jury rig in here, so that's, go ahead and continue.
All right, cool. So my notion, what I'm telling you guys is you got to go out and get yourself attacked, minus all those stupid restrictions, like the CEO is completely out of scope because we know he's going to get hacked. No, that's the first thing you try, right? Because everybody else will. And right about this time, usually people either leave the room or look at me like I'm completely from Mars or I'm a complete lunatic. Because not very many people are comfortable, particularly in the enterprise, with the fact that we're going to walk in, we're going to pay somebody. Here's a fact. We're going to pay somebody to come in and break things. And oh, let me tell you, things are going to break. Right? A little bit of word of caution. Random destruction of corporate property causes something known as a resume-generating event. Not that I know. So, if you haven't talked to Chris and his red team exercises, red teams are the only real valid way of preparing yourself. Really, that whole notion of red team. And I'll tell you what, go red or go home. Right? You can pen test yourself all you want with all the nice time boxing and all the nice scoping, and you can be ready for all the synthetic risks you want. But you get blindsided on some idle 3 o'clock on a Wednesday afternoon, you're still going to be in trouble because all that pen test ain't going to help you for squat. Who's seen the movie What About Bob? Remember Bill Murray? A little kooky in the brains in that movie?
Hello. We still love you.
Are you prepared for this?
I am prepared. I keep talking. I'm just marveling at the epic amounts of fail we're experiencing right now. So Bob takes little baby and
I'm gonna scoot in all the way.
Pin
Now would you please press F5 and keep on with your damn talk?
I'm going to
Nobody read ahead, okay?
please pardon the interruption. So we're going to take baby steps just like Bob did, right? Whether it's out to the mailbox like he does in the movie, or whether it's actually validating your own security postures. Because validation typically is a long journey. You don't start today and go, all right, we are in a world of pain, And tomorrow we're going to be awesome. We're going to test our... Look, nobody ever crash tested themselves, their car is secure. I promise, right? You don't see the big auto manufacturers go, all right, we just finished this car, run it against that wall. Bam. Wow, that was ugly. Do it again. Maybe next time it'll be better. Nope, still bad. All right, third time, I promise that head will not come off that dummy. Nope, still came off. You can't test yourself secure. This is where this talk really gets cool. So now what? Right? That's a
Blue screen. Blue screen.
That's a blue screen.
So, deer in the headlights, lots of fun with organizations to get analysis paralysis. You get to a point where, and now they're flogging each other. This is fantastic. See, this is preparedness. I've done it so many times, like I don't even care that there's anything going on behind me. So analysis paralysis is really all about, can you get beyond the, oh my gosh, how do we plan this? Let's take 6 months to plan this, and by then it's over. It's too late. Forget about it. So here's the plan, right? There's a 4-step plan involved in this. And there's really 4 very simple key phases. The first one is assessment. And assessment involves you going into your organization and looking at it. What do you look like on paper? How does your organization look on paper? What are your defenses? What do you think your defenses are? How do you think you'll handle an attack? How prepared are you, or how prepared do you think you are today? So I promise the how prepared you are and how prepared you think you are separated by a little bit of space. A little bit of an air gap going on there, I promise. Next, we're going to ask the question of what could break. Here's the difference between what could break and what could get hacked. Things will break. You guys all familiar with the concept of brittle systems? So if you've never had this happen to you before, you've probably joined the IT industry yesterday. There's a machine underneath one of your developers' desks that somebody at one point re-requisitioned or pulled back from another project because they're going to prototype something. Something that had never been tried. They just want to see if it works. Okay? Don't worry about it. We don't have time to secure it. It's not customer facing. We just want to see if it works. And the next day, they make it work. 15 minutes later, it's part of production, and you can't touch it, look at it, or sneeze near it, because if it goes down, you're fired. It's the most important server in the organization. That's a brittle system. Who's got one of those? Who's got several of them? Right. So when something breaks, how bad will it be? How many artifacts in the past do you have? Do you have any empirical evidence of this, right? Look, pen test reports, most of them suck, especially if they still have the Nessus errors in somewhere in there because they forgot to take those out when they printed it. I don't see the person who told me that in the room, so I can use that. Next step out of that is planning. We need to plan. We're not going to be able to just go run a red team exercise against your organization just cold. The result is bad. We get back to resume generating events. So in scope, for any red team type of exercise that we go through, right, once we've started looking at it, the notion of scope sort of falls out the window. It's your vendors, your partners, and you. Everything that makes up the ecosystem that touches whatever the target is, or whatever the perceived target is. So the fact that you bring home, your CEO brings home his or her corporate laptop and their kid plays World of Warcraft and serves Facebook on it. I'll give you 3 hints. First 2 don't count. Where are you going to be attacked first? Right there, right? They'll get a friend request from somebody that knows everything about them because they spent the last hour reading all of their Facebook page. They have everything in common, and they're going to give them a new game they should play. It's totally awesome. Don't tell your parents because they won't let you play it. But you got to turn off this thing called antivirus first because it stops your computer from working right. If you're laughing, it's because it's not happened to you yet. The bad element in this case doesn't discriminate. We don't get to pick what our targets are. Right? The bad guys, we'll just use bad guys in air quotes, pretend I'm doing this. The bad guys in this situation don't care. They don't care if it's your mom's PC that you let her borrow and you go to your parents' network, on their home Wi-Fi. Doesn't matter. That's not the target is your corporation, your data, the stuff that you care about, however they get to it, that's how they're going to work to it. Good guys follow rules, bad guys simply do not. End of story. Full stop. Right? If you get to be part of one of those cool cyber command types of units and you don't have to follow the rules necessarily, or you get to bend them just a little bit, Cool. But by and large, if you talk to anybody that works in the law enforcement industry, right, you have to follow a lot of rules mostly. Bad guys don't have those fun rules that keep them from doing whatever the hell they want to get to whatever the hell they need. So this tends to be a little bit overwhelming, and I get that. But strategies happen in pieces, and this is what we do. We start with little small parts, little autonomous units, right? We start with the little web server that we go, all right, look, we know the organization's got issues, so let's not go full stop right now. Let's go after that one marketing web server that's sitting over there. We think it's reasonably well protected. If we blow it up, which we probably will, I'm pretty sure none of us will get fired for it. Now the key is make sure it's not connected via a data export to your ERP system, just saying. Because if you do a SQL insert and you corrupt that table, it copies it over to this other thing, and this thing blows up, and bad things happen. Single standalone apps, make sure you actually emphasize and double underline the standalone part. There's not a whole lot of standalone systems in your network, do you agree? Everything is just ridiculously interconnected nowadays. You work up towards bigger units. You work up towards clusters. You work up towards application servers. You work up towards meshes of little things that talk to each other, little widgets, little gizmos, right? An application platform. You work towards your mobile unit. Eventually you get to entire business units where you go, all right, that sub-business unit is my target. That's my goal. I'm going to go after that. Thanks for coming. Eventually you get to all in. You eventually get to a point where you're like, okay, I've done this enough times to where I feel comfortable making everything this company stands for as a target, and I want to see how we respond. Lots and lots of danger involved there. When everything comes into scope, everything. This includes that CD that gets mailed from one of your third parties to you via that carrier that can be easily coerced into swapping that CD. All that is in scope. This is how real bad people think. They're not constrained by these artificial limits we impose on pen testers. So one small thing to talk about first, and that's with the question of who do you tell before you get going on this exercise? Anybody? Any thoughts? Brian?
Legal.
Yeah, Brian's read my slides before. So we have to be realistic about this, and you want to notify people, but you want to tell as few of them as possible that you're going to be doing this, and you want to cover your apps absolutely.
Yeah.
Crappy audience. You're gonna laugh. The audience the people at home have to hear you later. You want to tell trusted senior leadership, right? You don't want to end up out of a job because you're doing the right thing, but you don't want to end up out of a job as a result of it. It's not fun having to explain to your next employer why you got fired from your previous one. Well, because I hired this company to break stuff, and they did, and it was epic, and we went out of business overnight.
Yeah.
So can I come work for you? That probably doesn't go over well, right? So trusted senior leadership. How many of you guys, who's in InfoSec here? How many of you guys have a regular relationship with your chief legal or chief risk organization? Right? So you have to be able to share a cup of coffee, buy them coffee, buy them lunch, get them to talk to you, at least have them know your name, because you're going to need their help eventually. So, phase 3, action. Action is fun because we get to do stuff. So, many of you guys that have done this, you kind of feel like a ninja versus pirate thing. We're going to go with the ninjas theme here. And validate the organization in phases. There's a couple of key phases to every good red team exercise. Step 1, recon. You get in, and you look around, right? You start it, you dig into the engagement, and you go, okay, so my target is the Acme Widget Corporation. What do I know about them? Do some open source intelligence, get to know their people, get to know what they like, get to know the websites they hang out at, get to know the ugly things they like to do off hours, figure out what their habits are, that they like to garden, right? What car clubs they belong to. All those are important things. figure out what target you want to go, acquire a target, figure out what you want to do, figure out what you want to go after. Generally, when you get to a state where you're allowed to go break in, they're going to give you a target. They're not just going to say, hey, break into my company, take whatever you want, just prove that you were here. That's a little bit dangerous. Most companies won't do that. They won't fall for that. They'll give you a target. If I'm the customer here, I'm going to tell you, transfer a penny out of the corporate account to yours. Can you do it? Let's see you do it. I dare you. Come on. Right? That's that kind of approach. Give me something. Show me something that you can do. Give me the worst case scenario. You got to pick high value, low risk targets. These are the things that you do that are going to give a lot of impact to me, a lot of negative impact, but a lot of low impact to you as the risk, right? You don't want to get caught. That's a big deal. Infiltration, you get in, you establish a beachhead. So you get in, you find a nice web server that's going to give you a shell, so you can look around the rest of the organization. And then you start looking around again. Because that target that you thought you wanted may not be what you actually want. Because it's like, hey, look, there's this web server, I'm going to try to get in, get a shell on that box. It's like, all right, I got a shell, now what? Ooh, look, there's more juicy stuff over here. Oh, but there's juicier stuff over there. And you start looking around, right? That's why recon is so important as a second phase. Reevaluate the targets you're going to go after. It's not rocket science. Exfiltration, funny story about exfiltration. Getting the stuff out. Really funny story about exfiltration. Work with a group that had no problems breaking in, finding really cool stuff and going, all right, we've got it, now we're going to get it out, and they just couldn't figure out a way to get the data out. It's like when a snake swallows a safe, there's just no easy way to get it back out. No, really? Yeah, tough crowd. Yeah. So they couldn't get it out, so what did they do? They compressed it, dropped it on the admin's machine, which is outside the locked doors that are the rest of the office, and then showed up as part of the cleaning crew, popped in a USB drive, copied the file over, walked out, see how you doing, thanks for holding it open for me, have a great evening. Exfiltration, done. Take everything, they pretty much took everything. All right, so take as much as you can, leave no trace and don't get caught. Kind of the mantra of the red team exercise. Here's a little known, this is my favorite part of this talk. Big bold letters, nice asterisks that says, take fantastic notes. If you're thinking about doing red team stuff, if you're thinking about actually breaking in and causing potential harm along the way, keep great notes. I'm talking like OCD grade good notes. So let me ask you guys to see if anybody knows this. What's the number one thing that'll aid a good incident response? Number one thing in any enterprise. Yes, that's okay. We're getting there. More. Think this.
Time
synchronization.
Oh.
You ever try to do incident response across 37 servers that are all off by about a minute and a half?
Yes.
You don't count. You work with me. And it's a great way to spend 3 weeks of your life tracing one packet. No, it's a hoot. I promise. Great time. Brian also likes to run his head into a wall some days because he likes the way that feels. So next step is analysis, right? This is my favorite part. I spend a lot of time in InfoSec, but I've grown to love the analysis. You can be one of two people. You either hate the documentation analysis part or you love it. All right? You either want to break something and give it to the next guy, or you go, okay, you've broken it. Let me figure out why that broke. I'm the guy that's going to get what you just did and go, all right, let me explain to you why what you just did worked. So this is the prediction that you're going to get. Stuff broke. Now, this is not the same thing as me saying stuff got hacked. We're going to put this aside for a second. Stuff broke. Remember I brought up brittle systems at the beginning of this? Brittle systems are everywhere. If you don't think you have any, you haven't looked hard enough, or you're just in denial. Not a river in Egypt, I promise. Right? You are not believing the fact that these things happen. When you port scan a machine during a very simple try to find all the NT4 boxes in your network, and you cord up a VMS VAX box that hasn't seen a weird out-of-sequence TCP/IP packet since the early 90s, and it just happens to be connected to something that's controlled by the Nuclear Energy Regulatory Commission, hence the joke earlier about the smoldering hole in the ground, we call that a resume generating event. Stuff breaks. You didn't hack it, it just broke. You walked by and went, is this lock open? No? You moved on to the next one after you jiggled the handle. Meanwhile, behind that, the room just caught fire. Not a very good lock. So you're going to figure out, the analysis part is extremely important because you're going to figure out what broke and why. The really fun ones for me are the cool mental puzzles where you go, okay, the attackers at 6:45 a.m. were attacking this bunch of servers. 15 seconds later, this cluster over here, 3 continents and 2 data centers away, completely crashed. Why? Right? That's where your IT people and your architects tell you, well, they're not really connected. You go, I'm not buying that. That is way too much of a coincidence, right? There's a reason this somehow, and you dig into it, and you dig into it, and you dig into it, and you realize there's a data feed that goes between them over an FTP. Hey, by the way, that's an unsecured FTP out on the internet. That's probably bad. Right? You get to go understanding these things. What broke and why. This is actually a really, really important part of any test like this. Because, look, one of the things you guys care about as part of enterprise resilience isn't just what's hackable. It's what's breakable and how do you keep it from getting broke. This is part of that. How do you keep doing business when every time you port scan a machine, it falls over core dumps and you have to wait 30 minutes while it reboots? Not operationally sound. So system resiliency failures are everywhere, and we all know this because disaster recovery, let me explain to you how disaster recovery works in every organization I've ever, except for this one, I've never watched it here, but I've been a part of. We're going to do a DR drill. This is how it works. Okay, everybody ready? I'm going to gracefully shut down this machine over here. That one should come up. Everybody stare at it. Ready? Go. Okay, this one's down. Is it up? Is it up? Okay, it's great. We did good. No, you know what this exercise should look like? Great, nobody's paying attention. Cable out, power cable down, box crashed. Nobody's noticed. 45 minutes later, nobody's noticed. 2.5 hours later, that's now inconsistent. I'm going to plug this back in. You know what's really fun to do when we talk about system resiliency? What's really fun to do, database clusters that have bad or poorly architected recovery plans. So if you got a database cluster of 3 machines geolocated across the globe, and you randomly kill, I'm not talking like gracefully shut down, I mean like randomly kill them out of order, and then bring them back up and see what state they come up in. Do you come up in like the last known good state of the last box you killed? Or do you show up like 3 days ago and lose 3 days of transactions? How do you know until you've tried it? I know this is a scary notion, but how do you know until you've tried it? Does it work? All right, system resilience is big. Who's done a root cause analysis here? Aren't they fun? No, they're not. So let me ask this. Did the attack succeed? Did the red team attack succeed? Of course it did. That's the wrong question. It is absolutely the wrong question. Ask Nickerson. He's never failed. And it's not because the companies he tests suck. It's because there's always a way in. There is always a weak point. If you don't believe that, you're in the wrong industry. The question really becomes, how successful were you? Right? Attackers really fail. But there's 3 key measures to how bad was it, how successful were you. Who's got a safe in their house? All right, a couple of you guys. How are those safes rated?
Keep the maid out. That's about it.
Find it first.
How many hours? So Dave over here says, David says, how many hours it can burn, right? How many hours can that safe withstand a specific temperature before it turns your valuables into a piece of smoldering goo? That's what you want to know. So for like $500, you could probably get about 10 minutes. For about 10 grand more than that, you could probably get another half hour. You want anything beyond that, you're talking about large amounts of cash, right? This is how security really works in the really real world that we live in. There is no absolute. There is no it's secured, let's move on to the next thing. It's how much burn time do I have? How long can that fire in my data center burn virtually? How long can that bad guy rummage around my system, causing weird kinds of damage and setting off alarms before one of them trips and I go, oh crap, I should go look at that. My safe's on fire. So 3 key measures. Number 1 is time. It's like Underwriter's Lab says. This safe is rated at 10,000 degrees Fahrenheit for 15 minutes. You want another 15 minutes, you quadruple that price. If this sounds familiar, you've done budgeting before, right? It is not a linear thing. You want more security, you want more burn time, it's not a linear number. You don't get to add 10 grand and get 10 extra minutes. Not going to work that way. So how long did it take? This is like just like UL, right? The next one is how much damage did they do? How bad was it? How extensive was the hack? So there's those 2 components. There's how extensive was the hack, and then how bad was the situation around it. How many people freaked out and ran around like their hair was on fire? There's probably a couple. Most of them are app owners, people that think that they own one thing, and when that one thing breaks and goes down, their life is over. Right? The person that watches that one SAP database, and when it's gone and it's down, they cannot sleep until it's back. So how bad was it? The last measure here is criticality. How important is the stuff they took? How bad was it that they got it? How critical was the asset? What did you get? Now comes the hard part. In fact, this is like my favorite part. This is a full RCA on all the events. So we get a really large whiteboard. I'm guessing like several walls worth. And you take these 2 things. What broke? What got hacked? You do a full timeline and figure out, okay, how do we make sure, what can I do as a security organization to increase the burn time on this system? You're not asking the question of how do I prevent getting hacked in the future. So if you are, again, you're doing it completely wrong. It's how do I increase that burn time? How do I give myself more time next time? How do I detect it faster? Is it hiring more people? Is it finally patching that one machine that's 12 years overdue? Is it finally decommissioning that box there are no patches for because Windows 3.1.1 was decommissioned a few years back? And there are also no attacks for it. So we go down this attack path. This is why we ask our attackers to keep ridiculously OCD types of good notes. I don't mean that in a bad way. I mean that in a really good way. I've got some of these tendencies myself where I tend to write down everything I do, every keystroke, every packet, at every time interval. What did you do? Because I can look at what the attacker did at 3:14.26 a.m. and go, 0.818 seconds later, that database turned into a smoldering crater of oh crap. I bet I know what caused it. What did you do? Well, you sent a SQL injection type of attack. What did the string look like? It looked like this. Why did that happen? Now you get to spend a week figuring out why that one string made that database go poof. Where did security fail? Where did security go horribly wrong? It did. The question is where? Catch it as far upstream in the attack process as possible. Is there poor detection? Were you just not able to detect it? Was your analysis poor? Did you not have the capability to analyze the attack? Was the protection that you've paid many, many, many dollars and spent many years arguing about how much you need bigger budget for not adequate? Here's a really crazy notion. There's two outcomes from a CISO saying, I need X amount of money or we're going to get hacked. Okay? I know some people that still do this. Lots of CISOs still do this. There's two possible outcomes of that. One, by the way, you don't like either of them. The first one is they tell you, go jump in a lake, and nothing happens. Because why? You don't need budget next year because, look, I didn't give you any this year and nothing happened. Why are you asking for it for next year? Now, the only thing slightly worse than that is the land war in China. No? Golly, you guys. I was hoping for the next line to that movie.
Never go up against a
Cecilian
When death is on the line, that's right. Never go up against
Or
Sicilian.
more correctly, never go up against a Sicilian when death is on the line.
Very good. And then you got to fall over out of your chair because he dies right after that.
No, it's okay.
Right.
I won't hurt my back.
Where were we? So the other outcome of that is they give you a bunch of money because you scare the hell out of your board, right? They don't want to be the next company that's attacked and breached. And they give you a bucket load of money and you still get breached. Because now you're fired and they don't believe anything you've done is worthwhile. Both of those outcomes are really bad. This is why we don't sell fear-based security. People failures are difficult because you can't, as often as we try, teaching people is one of those things that we do, you don't do once, you do over and over and over and over and over and over again because they're going to forget. Most people forget about after the first month. Right? Chris Hadney was walking around here somewhere. Ask him how long it takes between the time that they do a phishing exercise or a human-based attack, and then they tell everybody in the company, this is how we got in. Please don't fall victim to this in the future. The time between that exercise and the time everybody forgets about it is about 30 to 45 days. We have a crappy attention span as human beings, don't we? Ooh, shiny. Process failures are fun because, like my example earlier, if step one is go to this website, oh, by the way, the network is down. How many of you stare at each other and go, well, I don't know what to do next? What do we do now? Right? Technology failures are everywhere. Because we all depend on, how many of you guys, let's do the opposite. Who doesn't have antivirus installed on every corporate workstation? Right, exactly. Well, you have how many corporate workstations? How many do you have total? And you don't have them installed at all? What's the name of your company? Right, so this is, so unfortunately, antivirus is one of those things we can't just, there's nothing in security that we can go, okay, we've retired that is an old technology, let's forget about it and move on. We keep stacking new things on it. And eventually we get to a point where our workstations have 37 agents loaded on them, and it takes 2 hours to boot, and we need 16 cores just to get our operating system loaded. And we can't blame it on Windows this time. So enterprise intelligence is a fun story. Yep, I got about 6 minutes. So enterprise intelligence is a fun story. So if you've ever worked in an organization, who here works in a large org? Okay, so you probably have a security operations team, right? That stares at security dashboardy things. And then you probably have an apps team that stares at apps type stuff, and a database team that monitors your databases, and a user-based team that monitors your users. Okay, cool. So there's an attack at 2 o'clock in the afternoon one day, and your network operations center sees a little bit of a weird spike coming at servers that don't normally get traffic during that day, but because it's monitored and no link goes down, it's not a DDoS, nothing bad happens. They look at it and go, well, that's kind of interesting, and move on. You go back to eating lunch or playing solitaire. Your security folks notice a interesting little attack that flies by, and it's flagged suspicious. How many of you guys would investigate immediately something flagged suspicious? Liar. Because you've got 38,000 criticals waiting for you. So suspicious you're going to get to someday after never. The apps team will notice that the application server caught a spike in utilization very briefly on the CPU, but you know what? It's still up. It's still serving pages. It's not defaced. Closed ticket, no issue. Your database team, and this is where most of us in this room would start whacking our head against the wall, because your database team will notice things like, here's an interesting metric, the fact that your average number of rows returned per query increases by 11,000%. I don't know, it sounds like normal usage to me. The fact that the number of kilobytes returned per query increases by 100,000%. Totally legit, right? How long a particular query takes spikes by about 60,000%. I mean, just ridiculous numbers I'm making up so it doesn't sound too obvious who I'm talking about. But bad things happen like this. But the database team logs in, checks the indexes, checks the database server. Everything's still good. Hey, by the way, it fixed itself 10 seconds later. No issue. Ticket closed. So in that meantime, most of us will look at this and go, holy crap, we got SQL injected, right? Yes, I hope. Just nod. Just play game. Just nod with me.
Don't do that thing, please. Ever.
Wow. So most of us would, if we had that kind of enterprise intelligence, enterprise visibility, we look across all those dashboards and go, that's bad, that's really bad. Somebody should do something about that like right now. But because we're looking at things like horses do with blinders, you look at this over here, this over here, this over here. Nobody notices this crap is going on in an organization. Right? These types of silos are horrible for us. Right? We're unable to completely connect the dots. What's the remedy for this? People need to talk to each other. Right? Defense 101. Hi. I saw something weird. What do you think? Nobody does this because they're too busy in their little itty-bitty worlds. Detect, deter, and respond. How do we detect something and deter it long enough to make an intelligent response on it? To deploy countermeasures. Because you want to deploy minimum change. At the end of this huge red team exercise, as you've done the full RCA, you want to deploy minimum changes to your company. Because if the problem is that you're not doing proper software security, you're not going to walk into your VP of applications and go, by the way, you failed miserably. Starting tomorrow, let me give you 13 new things you're going to do. And here's some tools you're going to start using. Because what's going to happen? You're going to fall out that second story window accidentally, aren't you? He's going to forget that you ever called him. He's going to lose your number. Minimum change, maximum impact is what we're all about here. Right? What are your goals? Yeah, you do want to deter the casual hacker, but you want to not prevent the attacker, because we know that's not possible. You want to slow down. You want to give yourself a burn time, maximize how much you're going to be able to absorb. Here's the fun key, right? This is not something you hear most vendors tell you. It's not about how much you spend. I know, right? It's you can't spend $1 million on your security and say, okay, this is going to give me a burn rate of 2 hours. I'm almost done. Yeah. Wow. You want to slow down the attacker long enough to figure out whether you're going to be able to detect them, right? You want to detect and react quickly, and you want to get those defenses nicely fortified to maximize that burn time, to give you enough time to respond. Detect it and respond. Optimizing defenses, defense 101, right? Spend what you can, whether you're doing free stuff, paid for stuff, people, process, or technology. See? Your red team never rests, right? You do this exercise once, you fix the problems, and you go at it again because you got to find the next big wart, next big hole. Business changes, priorities change, and technology changes. This is the world we live in. This is our reality. And attackers always change and they evolve. Threats change from one packet to the other sometimes. Right? What works right now, there's always a patient zero. You may be patient zero, but so what? How do you respond to that? I want you guys to make sure you start testing the defenses in your response using real-life attacks and not fail during a catastrophe. Like a chief chaos officer, right? Because you want to fail at your own hands and not at your enemies. And that's me, and I'm done. And thank you very much. Man! Thank you, guys.
Sorry about all the hubbub up here, guys. Appreciate it.
You kicked my ass, but you know what? I was resilient.
Yeah, you did good. You did good. A lot of men have tried and failed. You did good.
Toughest talk you ever had?
No, not by a long shot.
I mean, outside.
There was
outside of the company.
no, but there was no fire alarm going off, and there were not cops in the room. Yeah, that wasn't. I've done one that was a little bit more interesting.
Sorry, I'm going to give you some feedback.
Yes.
So either anything in your talk was incredibly obvious to me,
Okay.
or I mean,
Yes, that's our spare, I guess, in case we need to.